The morning air in Deeping St. Nicholas hung heavy, thick with the promise of rain. Precisely 10:14 a.m., the rhythm of ordinary life was about to be violently disrupted. Mark Lesage, his Skoda a familiar comfort, drove with a sense of quiet anticipation. He was a theater nurse, a profession that demanded precision and dedication, a calling that resonated deeply within him. Today, the sterile environment of the operating theater beckoned, a place where he could wield his skills to heal, to mend, to make a difference. His mind drifted to the evening ahead, to the warmth of the rehearsal room, the electric hum of his keyboard, the way his fingers danced across the keys, translating emotion into melody. And later, the cool embrace of the pool, the strategic play of water polo, the camaraderie of his team. These were the threads that wove the fabric of his life, the passions that fueled his days. Amanda Mealing, behind the wheel of her Mini, felt a strange detachment, a sense of unreality. The night before had been a blur, a desperate attempt to escape the suffocating weight of grief. Her father, his laughter now a ghost, his presence a void. Her beloved dog, a constant companion, a silent confidant, now gone. Pain was a relentless ache, a hollow space that nothing seemed to fill. At her friend's house, the cocaine had offered a temporary respite, a fleeting sense of oblivion. She had slept, or at least drifted in a hazy, dreamlike state, convinced the effects would dissipate by morning. But the remnants lingered, a subtle distortion of reality, a blurring of the edges, a dangerous undercurrent. She remembered her brother, his youthful face etched in her memory, the tragic end of his life a stark warning against the seductive lure of drugs. It was a cruel irony, a twist of fate that she, of all people, would find herself in this state. The guilt was a heavy cloak, a burden added to the already unbearable weight of her grief. She glanced at the road, the gray ribbon blurring slightly, and tried to focus, to shake off the lingering haze. Mark heard the sound first, a deafening roar, a tearing of metal. He saw the Mini veering towards him, an unstoppable force, a dark shape hurtling across the dividing line. There was no time to react, no escape. The impact was violent, a brutal collision that sent his Skoda spinning, the world turning upside down, the familiar landscape becoming a disorienting blur. Smoke filled the cabin, acrid and choking, a suffocating cloud that obscured his vision. His foot was trapped, pinned under the pedal, and panic clawed at his throat, a primal fear that threatened to overwhelm him. He struggled, his mind racing, a desperate prayer forming on his lips, a plea for survival. Passing witness, a man on his way to a meeting, saw the crash unfold in slow motion, a horrifying tableau etched in his memory. He'd initially thought the Mini was avoiding something, a fallen branch or a pothole, a fleeting obstacle in the road. But there was nothing there, just the sudden, inexplicable swerve, the horrifying impact, the sickening crunch of metal on metal. He pulled over, his heart pounding, a cold dread settling in his stomach, and ran towards the wreckage, his footsteps echoing on the tarmac. Amanda felt the impact, a jarring, bone-shattering jolt, a violent intrusion into her hazy reality. The world went black for a moment, and then pain exploded, sharp and searing, a searing agony that ripped through her body. She tried to move, but her body wouldn't respond, her limbs heavy and unresponsive. Her head throbbed, a dull, persistent ache, and she felt a warm trickle of blood, a sticky, sickening sensation. The image of her brother flashed before her eyes, a stark warning, a cruel reminder of her own fallibility, her own vulnerability. Emergency responders arrived, their sirens cutting through the morning air, a cacophony of sound that shattered the quiet of the rural road. They worked quickly, efficiently, tending to the injured, their movements precise and practiced. Mark was extracted from his mangled Skoda, his face pale, his eyes filled with shock, his body trembling. Amanda was pulled from her Mini, her injuries visible, her face a mask of pain and confusion, her eyes glazed and distant. The hospital, the extent of their injuries became clear. Amanda's head wound was deep, her wrist broken, her clavicle fractured. But it was Mark's injuries that were truly devastating, a cruel twist of fate that would forever alter the course of his life. The impact had damaged his motor skills, the delicate coordination that was essential for his work as a theater nurse. His hands, once so steady, now trembled, their movements erratic and unpredictable. The simple act of holding a scalpel, of threading a needle, was now impossible, a cruel reminder of his lost skills. The news hit him like a physical blow, a crushing weight that stole his breath, a suffocating sense of despair. His career, his passion, his life's work, all gone in an instant, snatched away by a moment of reckless abandon. He thought of the operating room, the sterile environment, the focus and precision required, the satisfaction of helping others, of making a tangible difference in their lives. Now that world was closed to him, a door slammed shut, a future irrevocably altered. And then there were his hobbies, the things that brought him joy, the outlets for his creativity and energy. Keyboard, the way his fingers moved across the keys, creating melodies that filled the room, translating emotion into music, was now a distant memory, a painful reminder of his lost dexterity. His hands wouldn't obey his commands, the intricate movements lost, the music silenced. The water polo, the strength and agility, the sense of camaraderie, the strategic play was also gone. His vision was blurred, his reflexes slow, the game now a cruel reminder of what he had lost, a cruel mockery of his former abilities. The flashbacks started soon after, vivid and relentless, a constant replay of the traumatic event. He'd see the Mini veering towards him, hear the roar of the impact, feel the spinning of the car, the disorientation, the fear. He'd wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding, his body trembling, the phantom pain of the crash a constant companion. The world was no longer safe, no longer predictable. Every car, every road was a potential threat, a potential trigger for his trauma. Amanda, in her hospital bed, was consumed by guilt, a corrosive emotion that ate away at her soul. The knowledge that her actions had caused so much pain, so much suffering, was unbearable, a weight that threatened to crush her. She thought of Mark, his life irrevocably altered, his career and passions taken away, his future stolen. She thought of her brother, the tragic irony of her situation, the way she had repeated the very mistakes she had always feared, the way she had become the very thing she had always dreaded. Her defense lawyer, Edward Lloyd, painted a picture of a woman in deep grief, a woman who had made a terrible mistake, a woman who was now paying the price for her actions. He spoke of her recent losses, her father and dog, the emotional turmoil that had led her to seek solace in drugs, the desperate attempt to numb the pain. He spoke of her remorse, her genuine regret, her willingness to accept the consequences of her actions, her desire to make amends. Court heard of her financial struggles, the sharp contrast between her past success and her current situation, the stark reality of her fall from grace. The token salary of £935 per month, a stark reminder of her diminished circumstances, her reduced income. The legal penalties, the driving ban, the fine were a heavy burden, but they were nothing compared to the weight of her guilt, the knowledge of the damage she had caused. Paramedics at the scene had mentioned the possibility of a hypoglycemic episode, the dangerously low blood sugar that could have contributed to her loss of control. But the drug tests told a different story, a story of impairment, of clouded judgment, of reckless disregard. Cocaine and the byproduct benzoylecgonine were present in her system, far exceeding the legal limits, a stark reminder of her irresponsibility.